So this was supposed to be a fun video about Caitlin Clark coming back from an injury, playing really well against the Liberty and the Sun, and how she's not just a deep shooter. She's the rare type of player who doesn't just create shots for her teammates, she creates layups for them. But nope, we had 2 skirmishes in this game, so let's pull this whole thing apart and figure out how it all happened. We've got JC Sheldon chasing Clark down the court, and she's gonna grab at the left shoulder and yank it a little, then wrap her up around the waist as Clark untangles herself. The left shoulder comes back later when she makes sure to show the welt she's got to the ref, who doesn't seem to care too much. Sheldon pressed up practically the whole game, trying to hand check to slow Clark down. She's forced to spin around on the behind the back dribble, which isn't a great look defensively, and then continues to impede the progress with a little hand check that Clark swipes off. JC doesn't agree with the ref, and Caitlin looks like she's enjoying this little back and forth so far. A little later, more full court press, so Clark sizes her up with a glance, then stops in her tracks, maybe even a little lean back for a pretty big collision. But the refs let this go, and it's probably a mistake, sports fans. In the ensuing possession, JC is staying in front, moving her feet, and Caitlin gets that chicken wing and gives her a little jab to get free. Clark is upset the refs are letting a lot go, so is Sheldon, who says that to Clark, and she replies, "No, you can't do that." "Yes, I can. I can do whatever the fuck I want to do." And don't ignore Marina Mabrey getting involved because she'll come back later. I don't blame Clark for getting pretty frustrated. Here's Rivers reaching in with her right arm while grabbing Clark's shoulder with her left hand, and the refs again letting this go, while Clark lets the ref know about it in no uncertain terms. She was still talking to the ref out of the timeout, and this is telling. She clearly isn't buying the ref's reasoning and gives her a fake smile and an okay. The eyebrows are working. She's saying, "All right, if that's how it's gonna be, let's get it on." So she gets her hands in the cookie jar on this steal. Obvious foul across the wrist to knock the ball loose, while the other hand is getting some contact in as well. But sick eye gaze to the rim to sell the shot, and then slip the bounce pass by Mabrey for the layup. The half got more and more physical as they traded cheap shot offensive fouls, and even though the refs are getting these calls perfectly correct, they're slowly losing control of this game as the Fever began to increase their lead in the third. And now we've got to figure out how the initial fisticuffs happened. You can see Sheldon give her a quick jab to the left shoulder. Clark glares at the ref, who is standing right there and doesn't call it. She gestures like WTF, and Sheldon says something back to her as if the clear foul wasn't a foul. Here's where Clark reached her breaking point as Charles goes up for a putback. The refs call a foul on this play. Caitlin is looking all around the court, sure they're calling it on somebody else. It cannot possibly be her. She goes to the coaching staff begging them to challenge this call, and sure enough, when we look at both of these replays, you can see Clark doesn't get close to touching her anywhere. So of course, Clark is pissed and is going to take matters into her own hands since she feels the refs aren't treating her fairly. Next play down, she's in attack mode. Sheldon is doing a good job staying in front and holding her legal guarding position. Here's some hip-to-hip contact that could be a blocking foul, but again, they let that go, and it directly leads to the eye gouge. The whistle blows and all hell breaks loose pretty quickly. We got Sheldon stepping up to Clark, Mabrey chucks her to the floor, and Clark cannot believe what is going on out here, and I don't blame her. First off, the refs needed to be aware this was a situation brewing, and while the trail backs up to get a better view of the play, she needs to be stepping in right away once she blows the whistle on the foul. You ignore signaling to the scorer's table until you're sure there's nothing doing with the players. Now, did Sheldon intentionally get her in the eye? The dribble comes up a little high, so she could be reaching for it. Does she tilt her wrist so that her thumb gets right into that eye with a little more force? Maybe. But they've also been going at it all game long. The intensity was there, and if it was a steal attempt, it was so off target that hitting her in the face intentionally has to be on the table. Especially because there was no immediate apology or "my bad" or holding out her arms to let her know it wasn't intentional. It was the opposite. She steps up to Clark, who just wants some space to be in pain by herself, and then Charles swoops in there pointing a finger in Clark's face as if to say, "You brought this on yourself." And here comes Mabrey with the absolute cheapest of body shots that sends Clark to the floor. Remember, Jokic hit Markieff Morris when he wasn't looking, and his career was never the same afterwards. Is it just me, or does this signify the kind of attitude towards Clark she's been getting ever since she got into the W? The only way we can be sure is if we're at the game up close to observe, which is why you need to download SeatGeek. It's the #1 rated ticketing app for everything from concerts, sporting events, and the theater. I've used them countless times. Their rating system makes it easy to figure out where the best value is, and I've got you covered. Use my code BBALL10 and you'll get 10% off of any purchase. There's a reason we've been partners for years and years. They're simply the best, and now you can share in that excellence. Don't worry about being called a geek, it's cool these days, and use my code BBALL10 to save. It seems like her opponents are so upset with her and jealous that they're willing to do a lot of cheap physical stuff, which is ridiculous. She's the face of the league, a wondrous talent who can do things no one else can. And these kinds of plays from Mabry could easily injure her and send interest and ratings down. I get that when you've got someone this good, using a hard foul to get her out of rhythm can be effective, but this is not that, and the league has got to do something before someone gets seriously hurt. This was made worse because it took them over 5 minutes to decide what the penalties were, and the decisions were ridiculous. They decided to give Tina Childs and Caitlin Clark offsetting technical fouls. I cannot believe Clark would get anything other than free throws for the foul that she endured, but they're looking at her slight push after Sheldon stepped up. Alright, whatever. Now they give JC a flagrant one, unnecessary contact to Clark's face. That's correct, but then they didn't give her anything for instigating the whole thing. This is ridiculous considering none of this happens without her invading Clark's space in a menacing manner. But it gets worse. Marina Mabry only gets a technical foul for this blindsided cheap shot. Here she is smiling and dancing when she realizes they're not ejecting her from the game. This decision was so bad that the league was forced to upgrade this to a flagrant 2 the next day, which would have been an automatic ejection from the game, and she knew it and was willing to do it anyway. I'd like to tell you that cooler heads prevailed from this point on, and it did get into blowout territory soon after, which led to Clark putting an exclamation point on this game with this deep 3 right in JC's grill, and then has a question for her. You like that? Kudos for not adding the B word to the end of it, and I cannot believe JC would dare talk any more trash back to her, having just lost the matchup and the game in a blowout. You can't guard me. And this reaction looks like Caitlin isn't just telling the Sun she's unstoppable, but the entire league that she's not going anywhere, so bring it on. But it wasn't over by a long shot. Sophie Cunningham steps in to steal the pass, and we already know Mabry isn't very coordinated and adds to this role with her right arm, which could have seriously injured Cunningham. So it wasn't surprising that Cunningham had something to say about all this when, in a poetic twist of fate, it ended up being Sheldon of all players heading down court after a steal. She sizes her up and just takes the hard foul around the shoulders. Now, we can see Sheldon wants to impart some contact of her own into Cunningham, and that's why the hands end up closer to Sheldon's neck area, but she doesn't fling her to the ground, which is where injuries can happen, and now all hell breaks loose under the basket near the fans, which is never a good thing. Remember, had the refs penalized Sheldon appropriately, this lightning rod wouldn't have been in the game because there would have been an ejection. If you're surprised that Cunningham was so willing to mix it up like this, don't be. She played football in high school, so she's no stranger to this sort of thing, and I applaud her for making a statement on behalf of her teammate. But in all honesty, she shouldn't have had to. The rest of the league should simply play the game the right way and not get involved in petty shenanigans that risk injuring the best player and biggest draw. But at least Clark knows her teammates have her back.